Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tabletop Voices. I am James Introcaso, your host. I've got an amazing guest for you today that I am so excited about. And we'll just get right to it. If you all have questions coming up, you can drop them right over on in the chat. We will ask them to our guest. And hey, guess what? This is a podcast now. So if you want to catch up on previous episodes, you can get this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all the usual podcast places. But now let's get to it. Amit, who are you and what have you done in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Hi everyone. Good to be here, James. So I created basically City of Mist. So City of Mist RPG. I did a bunch of other stuff before that, but I think that's the main thing, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's huge. So take me all the way back before you were working on RPGs. When did you first play a tabletop role-playing game? And, what was the experience? Were you running the game? Were you playing? How did it go down?
No, I definitely joined a game. I remember Dungeons and Dragons, but I was 10, so that was pretty early on, I guess. A bunch of friends. It's after school. Someone got the red box or something like that, and it was translated to Hebrew. So it's probably like 10 years after it got serious in the States or something. There was a budding role-playing game scene in Israel, and we started playing. It was awesome. So I really enjoyed it. And after a couple of years, I was kind of saying, well, that's not really enough. I need to check out what else is what else is out there. And I found Hero System, which is also kind of an old game, like a superhero, very flexible, but super crunchy, like a zillion rules. And I remember poring over the books and trying to figure out what the hell is elemental control, and me with my 13-year-old English. So it was cool. It was a fun time.
Yeah, totally. So you were, in Israel and playing role-playing games, having the time of your life. At what point do you make the switch to, just being a player to, I think I'm going to try this professionally. I think I'm going to try to make money doing this.
It's pretty later in the progression of things. I always created games, but I guess the age of Kickstarter has changed a lot of things for a lot of people. It allowed creators of many different types to start creating, even if they didn't have, a company of their own already set up and so on and so forth, or like an existing kind of business for it. So when I started seeing this success, I was like, I could try that. I could try something like that, and gradually I kind of started building it and dropped it and got back to it. So it was a journey.
Yeah. Well, now we were talking before this. This is what you do full time, right? So, like, did you jump in both feet with like, all right, I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to quit whatever it is that I'm doing, and this is it? Or did you gradually do it? How did you make that transition to like, this is my 40 hours or more like 60, 80 hours a week kind of thing?
Yeah, more like that. Yeah, it's it was a combination. So at first I started, I guess, creating some hacks for Apocalypse World and putting them out there, and then I also, started creating City of Mist, but it wasn't really what it is now. And it was just, we were play testing. We were doing a lot of the stuff before I actually decided to go, completely professional with it. But there was also a huge leap. There was also a point where something kind of ended. In my previous job, I was a product manager, and I was like, okay, this is it. I mean, I might as well do it now. I can either go and look for another job that I don't really want to do right now, or I can just, take a shot. And I did, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy about it too, because we got City of Mist out of it. So for people who don't know, what is City of Mist? I know that's a big question because City of Mist is enormous.
It is. It's huge, and also it's kind of those. It has like 100 keywords, like noir, urban fantasy. Some people say superhero. So it's kind of hard, but really, very simply, City of Mist is a game about ordinary people with legendary powers. So it's set in a modern day city where normal citizens, normal residents of the city, um, basically have some kind of legend or story or myth or literary work uh, inside them that grants them superpowers based on whatever story that is. And the other aspect of the city is that it's veiled by this force called the Mist, which basically keeps everyone who hasn't uh, awakened to their legend, um, keeps them kind of oblivious to the people with powers, and that creates this kind of, the whole magical world is kind of a criminal backstage world. Um, and it's all very mysterious, and when you start as an awakened character, you don't know a lot and you kind of have to explore it.
Yeah, there's so much awesome going on there, right? There's a lot of, we've got this cool noir city setting. We've got these people with powers who are connected to these legends. Could you talk a little bit more about the legends and how those influence the characters and the world? It's and how it relates to the setting of the city itself, right?
Yeah, so basically, people, at some point, your character, as any other what we call rift, those legends or the PCs, basically the player characters are called rifts. There are rifts in the mist, or like basically holes in the veil of the mist, through which legends can come and manifest in the city. And at some point, when a person in the city starts awakening to their legend, um, it's a process. You just start, magical things start happening around you, and then there are different levels of awareness also in the game that you can develop. um, you maybe start out as someone who's just kind of just aware vaguely that something uncanny is happening around them. And as you kind of give in more and more and more to your mythos or your legend, but we just generally call it your mythos, as you give into it more and more, you open up to it, your powers grow. And also, you kind of have to sacrifice something of your ordinary mundane life, whether it's a relationship or a job or your past or whatever. And there's an interesting balance also in the mechanics of the game, that between the ordinary and the legendary, always within your character, that can go back and forth and can also go overboard in either direction. You can become an avatar of your legend, this kind of crazy modern day manifestation of your legend that's kind of seeking to tell your legend across the city in a big scale. And that kind of automatically makes you a little bit of a villain. And
Mhm.
you can also forget about your mythos completely and play as an ordinary person, and then maybe reawaken later. But there is a dynamic in the city of awareness of how much the mist affects you and how much you're connected to your legend. So let's say you're like, we have a character called Excalibur, because she's Excalibur. She's not Arthur. She's not, Lady of the Lake. She's the sword. That's the legend inside her. And she has this ultimate weapon inside her. And she starts out as this very, very, she's actually also a very rich kind of dame, lady, high society of the city, from old money, coming from old money. And she starts out really focused on that, but she can evolve into anything. And that legend could potentially explode in her. So yeah, so all the rifts are basically, they're a mix of their um, mundane desires and passions and agendas. Like, just, if one rift could be a bartender, one could be a street cleaner, one could be a CEO, and
Mhm.
at the same time they have these stories pushing them forward. So it's a very, very dynamic setting. There's a lot of forces going around. Basically, every character has a different agenda, so it can create a lot of interesting situations.
Yeah. What are some examples of these legends that people can have, pushing them when they have powers?
So, for example, Excalibur has this question about the
Mhm.
balance between justice and violence, right? So every character actually has a couple of questions that they have to find out the answer to. That's what their mythos wants them to discover, and that's kind of built into the system as well. So Excalibur's question is does justice always require violence? Because she's a weapon, and she's a weapon created to bring justice. But there could be there's a character called, I'm talking about the pre-gen characters in the starter sets, but of course you can create your own character. So we have a character, Kitsune, who's like a little fox spirit, like a Japanese fox spirit, and he's more interested with how we can help, because that's kind of, I should say they, because he's kind of their gender is kind of fluid. So they're more about how can they help, and how can they go back to the realm of the gods, and so on and so forth. So they're very different aspects to it. There are avatars, like villains, pre-created villains in the canon, I guess, of the setting, that desire different things. Some avatars desire to help the city, but in order to help the city, they have to have problems in the city. So it gets really complicated and dark. But the
Sure.
agendas are very diverse, very diverse.
Yeah. There's a ton. I know going through the book, right? Baba Yaga and the Big Bad Wolf and all these legends from all across literature and folklore and that sort of thing. It really is infinite, the number of things you can draw from. One of the things that I'm also fascinated by is like, you don't need to be in a body that necessarily matches, the spirit of the thing that you're going for, right? So like, you don't need to look like Baba Yaga to
No,
have Baba Yaga's story inside of you. You could be an 8-year-old boy and have Baba
yeah,
Yaga's story inside of
yeah,
you,
yeah,
which also adds to that mystery noir element, which is really, really important in City of Mist, right? You are solving mysteries essentially a lot of the time.
yeah, definitely. The noir aspect of it is a big deal. But just to say one more thing, it was a really important thing to have that, to make it clear that you don't have to be necessarily related to the ethnicity, the gender, the age, the body shape, of the legend. So that was important, because I think that's kind of it helps us learn about more legends, and the amount of legends. We just did this kind of question to everyone on our social media. Tell us your legends, and people came with stuff from all over the world. It's just amazing, um, really,
That's
really
cool.
beautiful things that we're going to incorporate into the next books. So yeah, that's the best part about it. You learn about a lot of different stories, and you create your own stories. But the main thing is that it's all an investigation in a way. I mean, you get a lot of action scenes in it, you get a lot of drama, but there's a big aspect of investigation, and you don't just investigate cases. You also investigate your own characters' mythos and what the hell is going on with me. So there is also kind of like self-investigation.
Hmm.
Um, but also because the mist kind of covers up the trail on the activity of legendary beings and other rifts. So basically, you always start an investigation with the mundane or outwardly visible aspects of what happened. And as you dig in, you're like, oh, wait, this guy isn't a sleeper. He's not just a mundane person. There's something going on. There's a story trying to be told
Hmm.
here. Sometimes it involves crimes and wrongdoing and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Uh,
I imagine there's this because the player characters have these things inside them that they're investigating as they're seeing like, oh, this is what you could be driven to do, right? This is what a story could drive you, a legend could drive you to do this, that there's almost like this aspect of, am I a ticking time bomb, right?
so,
At what point do I become the case? And I'm no longer investigating cases. I am the thing that they're trying to stop. I feel
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's a big theme in the game too that makes it dark.
yeah, yeah, totally. And that works into noir, right? Gray morality.
Hmm.
You could be, you're the investigator, but you're using violence to get the truth out. So are you the crook or are you the detective? And it's very very much along those lines. There's a lot of influence from Daredevil, of course, and like the Netflix show Daredevil and Jessica Jones, and those really characters that are they can go either way at any given time. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool. And along the mystery line, I think, and you and I have talked about this before,
of course,
mysteries are hard to do in role playing games because you don't know necessarily how the players are going to investigate, right? You can prepare until your eyes are bloodshot and red, and they will go somewhere else. They will find a different way to investigate than what you had planned. How does City of Mist approach that? What is the approach for, like, mysteries are hard, players can get frustrated if they're not on the right track? Like, how do you do that?
yeah. So I guess the main thing with the rules, the main aspect of the rules that allows for a nice investigation to kind of unravel in City of Mist is the investigate move and the concept of clues. So you can use some of the mechanics to gain clues, but a clue is basically a question that you can ask the MC or the GM, and 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 the MC has to. I mean, they can either give you the straight answer or they can give you a clue, like some kind of a hint or a lead to getting the answer. And this is a very important, I think, thing for investigations in City of Mist, because it means that the players can ask any question they want. They can come to the crime scene on the first scene of the game and spend a clue on asking who's the killer.
Mm.
And the fact that the MC can either give them a straight answer or a lead keeps the pacing in the hand of the MC, but it gives them something valuable so that the story continues. So you see how the rule is kind of, it doesn't prevent the players from like going full on asking whatever they want,
Mhm.
but it keeps the MC the pacing in the hands of the MC, so they can choose what to reveal and how fast. And I think that a lot of MCs have said that this kind of helps play a mystery better. And the other
Yeah.
aspect, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just going to agree. Yeah, go ahead. What's the other
Yeah.
aspect?
The other aspect is the tools for writing a mystery for the MC. So we have the iceberg model and so on and so forth, and that kind of helps MCs writing good mysteries, basically, and mysteries that can go several different ways.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's huge that you have a mechanic that allows for sort of, I know I want to investigate something. I know this is the answer I'm trying to get to. So I'm going to try to find that answer rather than I'm going to search the bookshelf for clues when I should be searching under the kitchen cabinet or something, right?
Yeah.
And it also then allows the GM to dole out how much information they want, all about pacing, which is really, really good. I also love the mechanics of City of Mist. Again, we were talking about this earlier, but like, I think a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, you see they have this like list of attributes, sort of similar to D&D, right? These are the ways we interpret the world, and then you roll and you add, the bonus of whatever attribute that role is. That's not how it works though in City of Mist. There's a way more flexible system going on, and I'm wondering if you could talk about the tags a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, the tags were a big deal. It's kind of I saw something similar happening in a game called Lady Blackbird, which I played a
Mhm.
one shot of, and it was really cool. And I kind of thought, okay, we need to do Apocalypse World with tags, and it basically means that your character does not have any attributes. All it has is a bunch of tags that just define the things you have, the qualities you have, the allies you have, the gear, the powers, the whatever, the skills. So even just like your moods, okay? So there was one characters can have tags like a pistol or a knife or fast or strong or smart or spell book
Mhm.
or so on and so forth. But it can also have tags like, of course, brave and all these things. But it can also have tags like one character, the sample character, I think, has in the book has long, unbreakable speeches. And and um, and then when you play the game, basically you count the number of tags that are directly relevant. So there isn't like a lot of discussion going on about which tags are and which tags aren't. The tags that are 100% directly relevant for helpful to your what you're trying to do, and you just add that to a roll, and that's it. That's the mechanic of the game. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that can knock the number down and up, but that's the core mechanic. Which means that you're always descriptive about what you're doing. You know, you always
Mhm.
have a couple of tags describing what you're doing, and it keeps things very, very flexible. So if, like me, you're getting a long, unbreakable speech right now, you get +1 to your roll because you have the tag long, unbreakable speeches. So that's
Mhm.
that's basically the mechanic.
Which is awesome because it really does incentivize role playing in a way that, like, beyond, hey, role playing is fun, it's like, hey, you got to role play to win. So even if you're a power gamer, when you sit down to play a game of City of Mist, you're incentivized then to role play and get on with it and check it out and that sort of thing. It's just, and it's so flexible and incredible and just really fun. It's a lot of fun to put together, and it makes it very easy for game masters to improv. And along with that, we talked about moves earlier. Again, before this, moves in Powered by the Apocalypse tend to say, like, these are the ways you interact with the world. And if there's not a move for it, like, well, I guess you can't do it. City of Mist has moves, but they're very broad and really encompass a lot. Was that specific? Was that choice specific so that uh, people could do whatever they wanted in the game?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, the idea of the moves was no longer to try and capture specific ways of doing things. For example, investigate. There's like a million ways to investigate. Like you said, you can search the room. That's one way. You can kind of look around and deduce like a detective. You can use your whatever, speak to the spirits of the dead, and so on and so forth. And there's literally a million way to investigate. And the idea was that the investigate move would kind of be agnostic, like totally separate from what the tags that you use to activate that move. So basically you only have 8 core moves in the game. That's it. And those are your 8 actions, and then you just stack on your tags and they tell you what you're doing. So if you're investigating with the tag, I don't know, well, like seasoned detective and or hardboiled detective and forensics kit, you're doing one thing. And if you're investigating with the tags, like we said before, contact the spirit of the dead, it's another thing. But it's everything is done with the same move. So
Hmm.
uh, same,
Totally, totally.
all the other things.
We've got a couple of questions from the chat here for you. So let's dive in there and see what people are saying. Uh, so Devil in Waiting wants to know, how does one discover their mythos? What is once you've been awakened, how do you know what your mythos is?
Right. So the Rifts don't necessarily know their exact legend. They just know that they have powers. It's all very vague on purpose, especially at the beginning as they awaken.
Mhm.
You when you start the game, you usually like the basic character creation puts you at one of either the middle level of awareness or a little bit less aware or a little bit more aware. But there is
Mhm.
also an option in the game to start playing awakening characters, and at that point, you just have you actually don't even have your mythical tags, your legendary powers. You're just kind of starting, and you get your first mythical tag, and then you're kind of exploring it. And I've it's not built into the game, but I've seen people that play where they don't even know what their mythos is. The players don't even know what their mythos is, and the MC, I guess, allocates it or just kind of lets them explore it, and they discover, which is also kind of a cool awakening game. Um, yeah, so that's a little built into the mechanics, but it's mostly
Mhm.
a role.
That's really cool.
I hope
That's
I answered the
awesome.
question.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Gabe Theck wanted to let you know that first, he wanted to thank you for creating City of Mist and being so active in the online community. He's a huge fan and is trying to sell the game to every other RPG player he knows, and has run a successful campaign that lasted 6 months and was 120 hours of total gaming. That's awesome. So,
That's
yeah,
amazing. Thank you
yeah,
for being
Gabe.
a supporter of the game, Gabe. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. And his question is: do you have any plans to give more detailed descriptions of how to run certain things or how to evoke the noir feeling of the game? And he said he's not discrediting the very useful tips in the core rulebook. He just wants more. So, is there a plan to do that now that you're looking at splitting the books?
Yeah, we've split the books. They're actually the backers of Knights of Paintown, the second Kickstarter, already got them yesterday, and they're definitely the books are going to stay. We kind of have a lot in the core book, and I'm not sure people know what the core book looked like. It's actually out of print right now, and it's huge, right? So I can barely myself carry it for very long. And so sometimes I think maybe I should have said a little bit less about how to, evoke the noir uh, atmosphere. But that's a good question. We're definitely going to create some more specific tips about specific things in the setting. For example, the gatekeepers, the people who are kind of running and operating the mist. That's definitely going to be in the next expansion, Shadows and Showdowns. But it's interesting. I actually haven't heard of many people who want more tips like that, but because there's a lot in the core book, but that's definitely something I'll consider. I have a lot more to say, obviously, but
Well, luckily
yeah,
you can hear Amit talk on podcasts and things like that too, where he gives a lot of advice. Like the Tabletop Babble episode you were on, we talked a lot about noir feeling and how to evoke that and get that right. And a big part of that, I think, is the city. Let's talk a little bit about the city itself, right? The whole game takes place in the city. Now, is the city a specific city, or is it something that you build with your players?
yeah, definitely something you build with your players. It's you got a couple of options that we, in the book kind of propose, but you can do a lot of things. You can base it on a specific city, for like the Marvel cities that are New York, Los Angeles, so on and so forth, Chicago, and or anywhere in the world. Obviously, people are players from all over the world set it in different cities. You also have the option of setting it in this kind of generic comic book city, and you can do that in the game because the mist kind of makes everything fuzzy around the edges, especially as you go out of the city. There's this strong pull for characters not to leave the city, and it has two aspects. One of it is in the story because there's actually something going on, and the other aspect is also because the game doesn't really want you to start traveling around the world and exploring the world. This isn't the deal. A noir game, I believe, should take place in a city, and that's where it belongs. So it kind of serves a double. But yeah, there's a double purpose. But at the beginning, at the exposition session, as we call it. You create the city and you flesh it out with the players. So it's actually pretty magical. I mean, I've had some really wacky input coming from players that I was looking at, at my notes, and what the hell am I going to do with that? Like one of the playtest groups was like, we want to be a support group in a community center. Like that's our crew. We're not investigators. We're not, rifts for hire like Shadowrun, rifts for hire. We're a support group. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And it ended up being the best campaign I've ever ran with the system, because you create the city, you create the crew, and
Yeah.
that's
It's awesome. It's really, really cool, and I love I love the little districts that there are in the book. You know, for sort of guidance as like, hey, here are different districts you would find in a really big city, especially in a Nowari city, and here's who might be there and that sort of thing. Because it really helps you build the city you want to build as a GM. Like, oh, okay, my players want to do these things. We found this out during our exposition session. Like, now I know I can grab this and it's ready to go. And I've got all that. It's so good and fun. There's another question from Devlin Wayton. He wants to know, how easy is it to pick up and learn the system?
I'll let you answer that because I can't say it.
Yeah, it's super easy to pick up and learn. It is. I think it's a great game for people who it's their first role playing game because it is so flexible, but also so easy to understand. And I think it's also a great role playing game for people who are super experienced because it is so flexible and you can do so much with it. It's hard to get bored of it too after playing it a bunch. So it's a really, really great system. If you like mystery games, you should play it. If you don't like mystery games, this will make you like mystery games. I really love City of Mist. But I do think I would use it to introduce people who have never played a role-playing game to role-playing games. That's how easy it is to pick up and play. That's what I would say. So how about you? Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course. Thank you for making something awesome.
Thank you for all the support. And you're going to create a district for us. So after the
That's
last
right.
Kickstarter, so, and hopefully
Yes,
more.
yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to the tourist trap district. This is going to be gruesome, I think.
Yeah, definitely. A lot can happen in the old tourist trap district. So I'm very much looking forward to writing for the game too. So I must confess, I am certainly biased, but I do really love the game that has been put together and that you have made. Which brings me to my next question: what are you most proud of in City of Mist? What is one of your favorite parts of the game?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. I guess there's a lot of things that I'm really proud about. I'm very happy that people enjoy it. That's the main thing, really.
Mhm.
But I guess like for specific details, I think it's the system. I'm very happy with the way the system is working, both the kind of core resolution mechanics with the tags and the statuses and um, the flexibility it offers, but at the same time how it gets players to be creative. That whenever I play with people, I'm just surprised at how they use the tags. It's a lot of fun, and the fact that it's still kind of robust and mechanically, and it's not falling apart. You can play for a long time with it. It's not kind of like wishy-washy and hand waves, and it doesn't get very up in the air after you use it for a while. And this is, of course, after playtesting and getting feedback from people. This is what I was worried about. So that's what I'm proud that we were able to create. So I guess that's the main thing.
Yeah, totally. It really is a lot of fun, and it's was the talk of Gen Con this year. So that was really fun to hear people talking about it and be like, "Oh yeah, City Mist, have you played?" And it just seems to be growing more and more in name recognition, which is great because it deserves it. So what are your hopes for the future of the tabletop gaming industry, either for you personally or for the industry as a whole, or both?
Well, I think that well, I guess all my hopes I've put into City of Mist, so you can see what I would like for us to try now as a community and in the industry. I think that there's a lot of fun. I actually enjoy a lot of crunchy games, but I think that the
Mhm.
cinematic games, the games that kind of make you create an experience that is similar to something you might see on the silver screen or whatever, what on screen or in your mind's eye even, but something that helps you create awesome experiences and mechanics that are kind of conducive to that and do not get in the way. as much as maybe in the past. I've been playing, for example, Shadowrun. That's an amazing game. I love the setting. I love the setting of Shadowrun. But sometimes the mechanics get in the way, you know? It's like there's a lot of dice, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of referencing, and you have to kind of know everything in order to make it happen smooth. People have to be very, proficient with the system to keep things. And it doesn't have to be this way. I think role-playing games is really going to grow. I think it's really going to. The more systems are kind of more cinematic, more easy to pick up, easier to pick up. I think it's going to grow even more. I think there's a lot of people who want to play role-playing games and are daunted a little bit by, that kind of like dice and pencil kind of look. A lot of people love the dice, but and I think there are a lot of also players that are already role players, veteran role players that have kind of ready to, focus on the story they want to tell and use the system to make it more exciting and dramatic and unpredictable, because the dice are like the life of role playing games for me anyway. So, the random element. So I think all these trends I would like to see, and I'm also planning on being a part of seeing them, of course.
Yeah. I think you're right. Nothing kills a cinematic moment. Like I always think of like how in some games, if you were on top of a building and you were going to jump onto an enemy below, even big, small, whatever, you're going to jump off this building onto an enemy. If you need to stop and open the book and figure out what's going on, that kills the cinematic moment, right? It's this big dramatic, is it going to work moment? And it's like, well, I don't know how that works. I got to stop and look up stuff and yada, yada, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's great that games are moving towards a system where it's like, hey, this is easy. If you don't know the rule for this, you can probably guess at it pretty fast. And it's easy to learn and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm excited to see that. And I'm excited to see City Mist at the front of that. What do you think is your advice for people who want to do what you do? People who want to design games full time. What's some good advice?
I think the first advice is be prepared to work hard. As you know it yourself, and everyone who's in this business knows that. It's not something you kind of do offhandedly. You really have to put a lot into it in order to. I mean, that's this. I only have like 3 years of experience in it, but that's my experience. That there's a lot of work into it, and if you want to create something that's good, and if you want to create something that's people will like and people will enjoy, so there's a lot of hard work. It's not just the passion. Sometimes you have to work when you're not like super excited about it, and you have to kind of push through, and then you get excited about it. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think that I think a lot of creators are creators, but they're not product managers, and I have to say that my background has really helped me. Really helped me. Like looking at it in an RPG book as a product, something that needs to do something for the person that holds it. It's not just a place to just like download. Even though I did download 500 pages of information, I think most of the people who opened it, as far as we can tell, were really happy with what they found inside and with the accessories and that kind of stuff. So I think that if you're not into that yourself, get someone to help you with the product design, with the marketing, with these things, because it's an important thing. It's not just about creating. And the last thing is that if you really believe in what you do, just go get out there and do it, and just like fight for it, and it's going to happen. So.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all of that 100%. It's like, if you want to do it, you got to do it, right? Before you make money, you've got to start writing and get your chops and put it out there for the world to see and take criticism and that sort of thing. But yeah, you also need to develop those admin skills, develop those product management skills, because that's the only way to get ahead right now. Nobody's really going to do that for you. And, you've got to learn all of these skills. Essentially, getting into RPGs, you're running a business. Your brand is a business, and that is a hard thing to do. Starting any business is really hard, even if you're just one person. So that is a huge part.
Especially if you're just one person.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
It's worth it. It's worth it, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's
It's
worth every every minute.
It's super rewarding. It's super rewarding. But it is not like playing a game or even running a game, right? Like designing an adventure for you to play with your friends is very different than designing an adventure for people to play at the table, right? And same thing with designing a game. Designing a game and writing rules so that people can understand it is also a really hard thing. So my hat is off to you, sir, for creating a game that is elegant, because that takes years to do, years of your life.
Thank you. And likewise.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think that at the same time, which I think it just proves that people today, the world is so open. There are so many opportunities, and I think it just proves that if you really believe in it, you can do it. So if you got a really great idea and you have the passion for it, go for it. I think that's,
so we've got an. Oh, sorry. Yeah, totally. We've got another question from Gabethek, or maybe it's Gabathek. And Gabathek says they remember you saying something about other theme books being in the next books. And Gabathek wants to know if you can tell us what they are.
Okay.
No is a fine answer.
No, definitely we'll share a couple of them. So these are theme books, and just for anyone who doesn't know, where's the camera? There it is. So these are actually the printed out theme books. Theme book is just like a questionnaire that you use to create your tags. So instead of just like, what am I? Who am I? It's just like it has really, really direct questions, and each questionnaire is about a different type of theme or in your character. So it could be about your powers, like different sets of powers, and it could be about your mundane persona or ordinary persona, like your personality, possessions, or gear, and training, relationships, and so on and so forth. So we pretty much thought that we had everything covered, and that was the feedback from the players. There's 14 theme types, and the players were, the majority of the players were saying it covers everything. We really don't need that many more theme books. But kind of delving it a little deeper, first of all, we're going to have in Shadows and Showdowns, the next expansion, we're going to have the rules for playing gatekeepers, who are like the opposite of the rifts. They're basically the government, FBI, men in gray, we call them, because they're the mist. They kind of support the mist. They seal off rifts. Their job is to kind of make sure that the legends stay on the other side of the mist. And they're kind of the baddies, the big baddies even. But the next expansion will allow you to play agents. Backers of the original campaign already have some of these rules, and it's pretty cool. So there's going to be a couple of theme books for gatekeepers. But we're also going to one of the theme books that I recently discovered that we could really use is the theme book called Conjuring. So we talk a lot about rifts, and we talk a lot about in the core book we talk about a lot about rifts. We talk about familiars. We mentioned familiars that are animal rifts, or relics that are object rifts. Objects with powers, animals with powers. But we don't talk a lot about creatures created by your powers. So if you raise a zombie, if you I don't know, if you kind of summon a dragon and stuff like that, these are conjurations. These creatures are called conjurations, and that's going to be one of the theme books that's going to focus on characters that can create other beings as part of their power set. So, and there's going to be a bunch more for familiar and familiars and stuff like that.
That's huge. That is really, really Cool. And thank you for that insider info. And thank you, Gabe Theck, for giving us this great question. I think we've got time for one more question here. This one's from Twitter. And this is from Blake Ryan Batman. Wants to know, what books or movies were your inspirations for City of Mist?
That's pretty easy. So Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely was the kind of hallmark superhero noir, or I guess super powered noir. Daredevil,
Mm-hmm.
and also the other Netflix stuff. So Jessica Jones, Luke
Sure.
Cage, big time, and Iron Fist. All of them had different aspects that were inspiring. I mean, Iron Fist, for example, is literally a character out of City of Mist, because he has this dragon inside him or whatnot.
Right.
Or he
Yeah.
fought a dragon and he has the Iron Fist, the immortal Iron Fist. So, but other aspects as well, especially the aspects of the drama in their lives, how like the battle between being a superhero and their more mundane interests and passions. So that was a big inspiration, and the other inspirations were actually computer games. So there
Oh,
was,
cool.
or a mobile game. There was The Wolf Among Us. It's a huge
Oh,
inspiration.
yeah.
Have you played it? It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a
Really
great
good.
game.
Yeah. And so that's a game based on Fables, the comics, which is also kind of City of Misty, but it's different. They're legends that pretend to be ordinary people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so these, I think, are the major things. I think the Netflix Marvel stuff and The Wolf Among Us, and then a bunch of other stuff that had smaller influence.
That's awesome. That's great, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. If people want to find out more about you and City of Mist, where should they go and what should they do?
So basically, wherever you just search City of Mist, you'll find us on Twitter, on Facebook. We have a very active community on Facebook. So if you're into City of Mist, you're welcome to join. We have a Discord channel.
Mhm.
We also have an active community on Google Plus for anyone who's there. So yeah, we're kind of everywhere, and you can just by looking for City of Mist, you can find me, ask me. I'm really like interacting with players of City of Mist. Sometimes I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time doing that. It's just it's fun because you get a lot of insights into the game and a lot of ideas. So like from people like Gabe.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's awesome.
It's super duper rewarding. So, yeah, it is really really cool to see that and to see people interact with you and to see the game get all of its recognition. So, thank you really for joining me today. This was a treat for me. And I'm sure all of the viewers loved it, and I'm sure all the listeners on the podcast loved it. And if people want to find out more about this show, it's every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Encounter Roleplay Twitch. You can catch up on YouTube, or it's also a podcast, and you can check it out at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com, where there's a ton of other awesome podcasts, like Tabletop Babble, another show I host that Amit has been on, where we talk about more City of Mist stuff, and we delve deep into the noir aspects and the mystery aspects. So you can listen to that if you like this conversation. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody be very, very kind to each other, and we'll see you later. Bye.